A $40 billion fund wrote a $60 million check to a cannabis lender last week. The fund finances industries globally. They ran diligence, cleared compliance, and signed the paper. The borrower is Fundanna. The lender wants to stay quiet for now. The dollar figure is the smaller story. The seal breaking is the larger one. I'm Patrick Nolan. Today on Pat Talks Law, how a single nine-figure loan and a Greeley, Colorado pharmaceutical facility are both signaling the same shift in cannabis capital and cannabis regulation. For years, the cannabis capital picture looked the same. 8 to 20 multi-state operators cycled through debt and refi. The other 50,000 operators got crumbs. Banks would hold deposits, move money, run ACH. Lending was a different conversation. Their balance sheets could not absorb the risk, and their underwriters had no framework to price it. Fundanna spent 5 years building the underwriting muscle the banks never developed. Over $500 million committed to the industry, more than 5,000 transactions funded. The original equity raise was $30 million. They turned it into $500 million in commitments by recycling the same pool as borrowers repaid. Last fall, real term sheets started showing up. Most were unworkable. One held together. The diligence on the deal that closed went beyond the loan book. Institutional lenders normally underwrite policy, collateral, and asset performance. Here they had to underwrite the entire legal posture of the industry: compliance, money movement, Federal Reserve exposure, whether the people on the other side of every wire were clean. Fundanna cleared it. That is the hurdle worth marking. CEO Adam Stetner's read on what changed. Fear turned into curiosity. The DOJ order moving medical cannabis to Schedule III broke something loose. Within 2 weeks of that order, banks that had ignored Fundanna for 3 years started calling. Former competitors from traditional lending who had watched from the sidelines for half a decade asked how the model worked. Stetner was diplomatic about the late arrivals. The honest red is sharper. People wait until something is obvious and safe, then show up wanting in. Every emerging market plays out the same way. The operators who took the risk early get to set terms when the institutional money finally arrives. The leverage math is the actual story. $500 million in commitments built on 30 million of equity and roughly 25 million of debt. Add 60 million plus the subordinated debt raised alongside it, and the leverage pool roughly triples. Apply the same multiple, and you get over $1 billion in deployment capacity over the next 3 years from one lender. Spread that through the supply chain. Operators with liquidity pay vendors faster. Vendors pay suppliers. Capital starts moving the way it does in normal industries, instead of choking at every node. One closing question from the senior lender before the deal funded: how do you think about medical versus adult use risk? Stetner's answer was that Schedule III rescheduling will likely apply to the product, not the use case. Tylenol with codeine is scheduled as a substance regardless of whether a doctor prescribed it or someone took it off label. If the DEA hearing goes where the framework suggests it has to, the product gets rescheduled, and the adult use versus medical distinction matters less for federal purposes than it does today. That is the lending story. The manufacturing story runs parallel. While capital was finally treating cannabis as investable, a facility in Greeley, Colorado, was treating CBD as a pharmaceutical product. Vantage Hemp started operations in 2019. They built 2 buildings to meet worldwide pharmaceutical regulations, not the US framework as it existed at the time. The FDA had approved Epidiolex before construction started. That told them the agency's posture on CBD as a drug, even if the broader regulatory environment lagged. Europe later issued the only pharmacopoeial monograph for CBD on the planet. That monograph requires botanical sourcing from hemp. Vantage is the only US producer making a botanically sourced active pharmaceutical ingredient that meets it. The operational distinction is real. Nutraceutical grade CBD allows plus or minus 10% variance on label dosing. Pharmaceutical grade allows none of that. If the label says 100 milligrams, it is 100 milligrams. A meaningful share of CBD consumers use it to wean off prescription drugs. Subpotent or overpotent product changes how those prescriptions metabolize. Variance becomes a clinical problem rather than a quality complaint. The pharmaceutical apparatus required to hit that standard is substantial. Separated process rooms to prevent cross contamination, equipment qualified in documented fashion, 3 consecutive validated batches proving the process is reproducible, drug master files on record with the FDA so customers running clinical trials can reference Vantage's API data instead of compiling their own. The Therapeutic Goods Administration from Australia has inspected the facility and issued a GMP certificate. The FDA showed up unannounced 3 weeks ago for the same purpose. You cannot manufacture quality at the moment of inspection. You manufacture it every shift for years before. The CBD pilot program through CMS is what makes the Vantage build relevant beyond export markets. 10-year program, government sponsored, Medicare adjacent. For the first time, structured data will accumulate on CBD in real world clinical use. And the manufacturing standards required to participate will leave nutraceutical variants behind. 2 stories, same underlying signal. Capital that ignored cannabis for a decade is writing 9-figure checks to operators who proved they could underwrite the risk. Regulatory infrastructure that treated CBD as a supplement is opening pathways that require pharmaceutical grade production. The operators who built for this 5 and 6 years ago are taking the calls now. Everyone else got curious. Curiosity is the first step. Real movement follows. The oven is on. The only question left is how long it takes to come up to temperature.